Small. Wow, tiny.
You are currently listening to Tiny Table,
where we explore TTRPGs you might not have heard of.
Whether big or small, we hope to cover them all.
Because we know that great things can come in tiny packages.
My voice has died, and so has Clutch. I was out at an event screaming for far too long, and so this is what I'm gonna sound like the rest of the recording. But regardless of all that, throw on a wide-rimmed cowboy hat, cook up some of that possum snake meat you harvested last night, and pour yourself a tall, tall glass of the good water as we get ready to dissect in this post-mortem.
Let it be known, halfway through this event, I told Skylar to stop screaming.
I couldn't. My friend was on stage. I needed them to win. They had a decibel counter. I contributed
Skylar,
for as long as I could.
Were you the decibel counter? Were you up there itemizing them?
No. They had a whole team kind of posted in the back where they were measuring with microphones how loud the crowd was cheering to see which contestants moved on.
They had a guy that was famous for showing his abs as Gojo.
And then our friend
that.
who was famous for showing his abs got second place.
It was true. We were like, boy, you better strip if you want to win.
I said, if I don't see tip, you're getting eliminated.
My goodness.
All right, but he clutched up to second place. And speaking of clutch,
I want to give a huge thank you up front to Matt for submitting this game. This is our third of the community submission games that we've played, and it's been an absolute blast getting to play this one. I'll set expectations up top. Clutch, unlike our previous community submission games, is still in playtesting. So this is not as completely and fully formed of a game as some of the others we've given feedback on. So we might be leaning a little more in the feedback direction in terms of things we think will aid the playtest's iterations towards its final form. But we have lots of good things to say about this game, lots of constructive stuff. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, starting off with some good stuff. I love the theming. Big sucker for Weird West. I think that a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the language that the book uses helps to emulate and be very evocative for these themes. I like that the book kind of swears at you sometimes. I think that's pretty awesome. I like that it has this focus on survival, and you're gonna be using things like guns for the majority of combat, but then alongside that there's also magic and psionics and all of these other twisted elements that don't just make it a survive in the desert style game and more of a survive in the desert style game, but also you can cast fireball.
I think I have gone on record saying that I am not usually a huge fan of survivalist games. My flavor of fantasy is more like high fantasy, medieval fantasy, all that. But I still found myself super engaged in this and really into the system of a post-apocalyptic system, which is usually not always my jam. I think because of the magic system, and it felt really, really, really rewarding to be a magic caster. And per Matthew's request, we actually each picked one of the quote-unquote archetypes. Obviously, because of how the game works and the character creation, you can get super creative with how you pick skills and bonds and edges, but we decided to kind of try to inhabit a more melee physical character, a psionic character, and a magic character. So I can talk more on how I feel about the magic and playing with that, but I'd love to hear from Neil and Skylar to hear how did your archetype feel to play?
Well, when we were cooking up our story, we had a great time being oh, cool, let's be twins, and one will have powers and one won't. And, that will kind of affect their outlook on life. And by doing that, it did, because it affected my outlook on this game. I think Clutch is not as rewarding if you do not lean into the weird, as in playing a null or a normal in this game is far less rewarding. I feel like I ran into more trouble and hit more walls. I had some friction. because I specifically chose to not play a powerful or magical, psionically powerful, more magical character. You're not completely useless if you choose to be pure melee, but you're definitely, I feel like, working against the grain of what Clutch tries to do.
I think an element there that might have also emerged in possibly in longer term play is that your construction of your character also leaned away from having so many combat edges. Am I remembering that correctly? You were more focused on like survival and navigational edges?
Yes, but at level 1, just as a starter adventure, you just lack the XP to be able to purchase all of the necessary things. So maybe in longer term play, it could have been more rewarding. I could have gotten more interesting or more ranks in my gunmanship, which would have improved my play. But even then, right, I think some of that just increases general damage output. It doesn't give me like new tricks. And like otherwise it would be like, oh, I can gain an edge in a different physical weapon, but that doesn't even change anything either, because in this game, the difference between bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing damage is nothing but flavor, and it explicitly says so in the text.
To kind of talk about like some things that I think might be like fair points of comparison, both like for probably how you felt, but also some things to maybe consider, is the game does put so many, especially if you're looking through the bonds, the vast majority of them are things that will in some way make you superhuman, right? Things like amphibious, or things like living slime, or things like shifting face. So you were kind of intentionally playing against the grain of the system, because I think it is assumed that something about your character is gonna be fucked up. So to play a truly fully mundane character is actually like kind of a challenge. Like it's kind of like doing a challenge run in a weird way, because you're having to pick from much fewer options. What I will say is it might also be a disservice to compare yourself, at least like character impact wise, to someone like Holly's character or my character, who were min-maxed to shit. Like everything I took was to improve my odds at succeeding psionically and succeeding in social circumstance, and I flopped and fumbled literally everywhere else. And Holly even had a starting bond that gave them more magic and started them higher off.
Magic.
Yeah, whereas you were kind of more generalist, and it was very helpful too. You like created us shit on the fly. You were more generally successful, I feel like, in a lot of your roles, but you didn't hit the same highs as we did. And so like those just might be things to like consider when looking at the system.
I think that's also just a good point to say of like, yeah, embrace the weird. It's Weird West, embrace the weird.
It's interesting because if we compare with something like Fallout, for example, which is a key kind of touch point inspiration for this game, the really esoteric stuff has higher, possibility caps. If you're getting into things like energy weapons, nuclear weapons, if you want to be able to like get so physically strong you can punch a death claw, these types of things, they kind of necessitate that you start weaker than average so you can build to eventually, due to your investment, be stronger than average. And that kind of harkens all the way back to like OG D&D. This has been an issue for the longest time of like linear fighters, quadratic wizards, where your fighter at level 1 is stronger than your wizard, but your wizard will grow to be able to bend space and reality, and your fighter will eventually be able to swing their sword 4 times instead of 1.
What do you do with the martial classes? What do you do with the martial classes? What do you do with the martial classes in this game's edition? Hopefully not nothing.
Well, don't worry, guys, because no D&D campaign ever goes past like level 5, so it's all kind of equal.
Well, so like it's like fine actually.
So like it's fine.
So I think what we're identifying here with this game is that it's a game where, in theory, that could be the arc it takes, but in truth, if you take a fully mundane approach, even at the beginning, you are weaker than if you lean into the surreal. So I think that's an element that's worth interrogating in the current balance of the game. Is like, is that the goal of the design? Is the goal of the design to say, hey, the weirder, the stronger, you should be going zany, crazy, psionic, magical, weird? Or is this a thing where Matt would want these things to be on a level playing field, and this can take some tinkering in the individual balancing of like the edges, for example?
So how was your experience, Sky, as the psionic? How was that different from, say, Holly's magic?
So, when it comes to the psionics, I think this was built so perfectly and specifically for me because the psionics, I feel, is the most gambling power system. It has a lot of really unique kind of interactions, but you don't get any plus ones. There's no plus ones, plus twos. You don't add any skill or whatever when you're rolling your psionics die. The most you can do is make your die bigger, and then it's rolled against a flat number, which is whatever your targeting's grit. And so, obviously, I think the first time I rolled it, I rolled a 2 or something, and I totally failed to charm a wild animal, which was very funny and led to some hijinks and some eggs getting stolen. But then in a later fight, I rolled, very high against a very low grit and mind controlled a dude to fucking crash his car into a tree and give us a ton of damage. And so it's very swingy, but in a way that I think is kind of fun and I think plays into the flavor of psionics being kind of naturally chaotic. They have some really interesting systems where if you roll above your grit stat on your dice goes down. A lot of things are going to shrink your die naturally. If you explode, your dice will go down. If you roll higher than your grit, your dice will go down. But likewise, if you roll a 1, your dice will go up. So some kind of interesting stuff there.
Well, I mean, usually your dice does go down after it explodes, but they make medicine for it if it keeps getting smaller. So we can set you up with somebody, Scott. Don't worry.
Wow.
Maybe I'll have to look into that. But aside from getting some treatment, I really liked it. I could see it maybe not being for everyone, but I thought it was very fun, especially as someone who leaned fully into it and gave myself both a bond and an edge that allowed me to increase my die type. By doing both of those things, I kind of made sure that I could play against some of the natural shrinking that maybe I also need to get checked out, that the game provides. And make it more kind of like an ebb and flow. So for me, it was very fun, very engaging, very swingy, because again, there's no stability with numbers. So I think that's intended, but a thing to consider if you're going to go into psionics, it is naturally unstable.
Yeah, so you mentioned the changing and shrinking of dice many times, see a doctor. But that is another thing I thought was really cool about this game is, like Kids on Bikes, you change die type based on your experience level in the skill. I always like that design. I don't know about the math. I don't care about the math. I like that my rock changes shape as it digivolves. I think that's cool. And I also like that there's a small note where it's like, hey, according to the statistics, if I roll a D4, that I have an increased chance of success as opposed to a D12. Why? And it's beginner's luck. I just thought that was just a nice little touch of great, that makes sense, right? I can live with those numbers.
And then right afterwards, it says, first off, you're a nerd. And that actually made me bust out laughing. I laughed out loud. I LOL'd.
Yeah, if you care about this or you notice this numbers change, first off, you're a nerd. Second off, it's beginner's luck. That was, another thing I'll point out just real quick while we're kind of talking about dice. I love that dice explode. Straight up, that shit fucking rocks.
It was so good. We exploded a lot. We had a lot of explosions.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I think, funnily enough, I was the only person to not explode, but I still liked seeing my friends do it, so...
Well, in the title of another game, Skylar, you're the one who usually keeps talking, so everyone else exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to briefly highlight that, right? It's a thing that makes the reading of the book, despite its length, it's 145 pages, not the longest we've covered on the show, but, beefier than just a quick pick up and play game. It was a quick breeze to read through because it was punctuated quite regularly with these fun colloquial jokes. It reminded me a little bit of the kind of a easy conversational tone of Fiasco's rulebook, in that it felt very much like a buddy explaining the game to you in text on the screen, which I quite liked.
I will say, though, that I wonder if sometimes the comedy would get in the way of explaining the detail of the situation. For example, in the fishing minigame, which is very funny that this includes a fishing minigame, it's very detailed. which is, it's interesting to see where game decides to zoom in the camera. And on some results, you get a very detailed description of what this particular fish does for you, how much it provides for you, special effects it can has like a log list of like experience and all this crap. And then on another roll, it's like, you pull up an alligator, it is very unhappy. And which is funny to read, but now I feel annoyed because I'm like, well, okay, you made me keep track of all this stuff for an earlier result, and now this is just so open-ended. What does that even mean? But I guess that's where the GM and the other players and your own creativity can like fill in the gap.
Yeah. I'd pull up the Predator stat block and we'd be an initiative.
Suppose so. So, I wonder about vagaries in the game, but,
The alligator comes up and is like, dude, I was in the middle of a date with my fiance.
Speaking of magical talking animals, Holly, what was your magic experience like?
Fucking awesome. This magic system, it rocks. So even level 1, I was so powerful. Magic is so cool in this game. It's very flavored, so like you can really get flavorful with it. Like it was super easy for me to make like a druidy, wardy kind of hedge witch person, but there's also like a lot of pyromancer stuff. There's a lot of like ice stuff, water stuff, regular like you want to like I don't know like do more charming, like anything like that. It was so flavorful. I love that a lot of spells had tiers, and so you could do different tiers of magic. So like I decided to pick one less magic spell in favor of moving something up a tier. It had a lot of like edges and skills that I could get more mana. I just love the idea of spending more XP to like move things up tiers or learn new things. Like the magic system felt great. Like at level 1, I had so much fun. And if people have been listening to this podcast for a while, they know that like I love magic casters. I love all of that, and so it was really nice to see a game that's a bit more survivalist really have a cool magic system that didn't feel pared down to fit a like gritty aesthetic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, going through and reading the magic system reminded me a lot, and this is praise because they directly cited this as inspiration, reminded me a lot of the anniversary edition, I think 5th anniversary edition of Vampire the Masquerade. World of Darkness is directly listed as a mechanical inspiration. This game kind of uses XP in a very similar way, and seeing like the magic having these different tiers that you can invest XP or your just starting abilities into to make higher and get more effects reminds me of how I believe it's the Tremere are the blood magic ones.
Oh yeah, which I've played.
Yeah, exactly. But in the
interesting.
earlier, yeah, funny, isn't that? But in the earlier version, there is way more blood magic than in the version that we happen to play.
Fuck.
The 20th anniversary edition. That's what it was. Yeah, in the 20th anniversary edition, you can use blood magic to do pyromancy, to do telekinesis, to like conjure shit from thin air, like at small things like coins to maybe then like a bullet to like full on like complex machinery like a motorcycle. Oh, our hanger just dropped from my closet. We're gonna address that in a little bit. And so seeing that magic system kind of reflect that in its tiers is very, very interesting, and is a thing that I personally like as, I don't know, the kind of group World of Darkness head of the four of us.
And I, Holly, am excited to announce that we will be playing Vampire the Masquerade. I'm kidding. Run it back.
You
I
can't
wanna play
make
that.
me read another World of Darkness rule book. Speaking of World of Darkness, this game is very inspired by it. I love the point buy. I love the XP. I also like that in this game, failure is rewarded with XP. That's great, right? Because you're constantly generating more XP. And like at level 1, there's just a lot of stuff you can't afford if you want to make like a really cool character. Like I wanted to be able to have more stuff available to me so I didn't spec into higher levels of gunmanship, but like, theoretically, within a couple of sessions of play, I would be able to, not even level up, but just accumulate enough points to buy something. And I kind of like that sort of segmented style of leveling up. I think that's really cool. Another big inspiration from World of Darkness that this game carries is in its formatting, which I'm not a huge fan of. I understand this game is very early in its playtesting, and it's in an alpha, it's incomplete, there's going to be a lot of work done to change it, but I found it frustrating. Where, just to get anything done, I had to scroll past an entire magic list, which was long, and then an entire psionics list, which was long, and an edges list, which was long, and a bonds list. There are many long, detailed lists that you have to scroll back and forth from just to even get a reference number. So I would really recommend moving forward with Clutch that the writers and designers take a little time to make sure that the formatting is very friendly to character creation, and that things are separated in ways that make it easy to create, and also there are floating reference numbers, right? Because when it says the steps of creating a character, it says it all the way at the top, and then so if you follow those things in order as you're scrolling, you do have to scroll all the way back up and scroll all the way back down. So having a side sheet, a reference table, a step-by-step process that pays attention, right? Because this game, it says assign your stats and then pick edges. But edges and bonds are what make your character's flavor. So it's almost like I had to think about what edges I wanted to take and then pick stats to justify those edges.
And fit the prerequisites as well, because you have to be able to afford, I need X amount in brawn in order to be able to pick this edge. So it's a lot of the systems are interconnected, right, in a way that makes the initial character creation system crunchy, but in that crunch, you're doing a lot of cross-reference in a way the book isn't currently formatted to really make it easy. So I agree with you there. The other thing I was thinking about is that, and Skylar, you had brought this up off mic in a good conversation earlier, that there's a lot of room for greater accessibility and ease of reference in the layout of the character sheet. This is kind of on all of our minds right now because we recently played Protect the Child, and the character sheets in that game are astounding for how much reference information they fit into the character sheet without just being completely overwhelming. There's reminders all over the sheet for the relevant rules that touch on the numbers on the sheet that you're referencing there. It isn't just label number, it's label number little side thing that references when you're going to roll these, or little list that reminds you all the things that give you experience right next to the experience box. So treating the character sheet almost like a micro rules reference document, I think could be a really good design update for the character sheet of this game. In its current version, it's a very pretty character sheet. It's very evocative. It looks good. We like the aesthetics of it, but there could definitely be some reformatting done to allow for, say, a combat cheat sheet that includes all the maneuvers, so you don't need to scroll to page 79 of the book during combat, so you can reference all of the maneuvers.
Yeah, just a bit of optimizing of space would be phenomenal.
I also think, I don't know if Clutch is planning to get a hardcover release. I definitely would recommend, and of course, a lot of this is to the point that, it's still an alpha, but when it is published, I think hyperlinks in the PDF would be really helpful, because a lot of times I wished I could click on something and it would immediately take me back to the page. I think that is a helpful tip for anyone who is doing a digital copy, because obviously when you have a physical copy, you can put little bookmarks, it's a lot easier. PDF, it can be very cumbersome to scroll up and down. So this is free design advice for everyone. Hyperlinks makes it super user-friendly for your players.
And to kind of go off of your point earlier, Neo, and to kind of expand on it and make this both a point of criticism but also a point of praise, is, again, this game, at least for someone like me, is so good at evoking and generating excitement for ideas. I created like a full other character or two within this system just in my own free time afterwards, because I was looking at like, oh my god, the Eidolon, and I could make a necromancer that leans into magic and it does all of this stuff. Ooh, wait, what if I made a tank and I took, the iron skin and then I grabbed his heavy armor, or I think iron skin prevents you from having heavy armor, but you get the gist, right? The bonds and edges and the feats and the different things that this game provide are so evocative. It has the character building style that I like to describe to reference Dungeons & Dragons. Everybody is Warlock. Warlock, you have spells and invocations and your race abilities and your feats and all this different stuff that lets you kind of Lego by Lego put together your character in a way that's very... Maybe it's choice paralysis for some people, but if you kind of get the feel for the blocks, it's very creative. It allows for a lot of freedom and a lot of expression, which I really, really like. And the bonds and all of these different features generate a lot of excitement and a lot of thrill for the idea of character creating because you get to make it your own. That said, I think that should be prioritized as the first thing that you look at when making a character. We had a friend just off of the podcast come in and was like, oh my god, wait, I know I'm not like a part of what you guys are doing, but I'd love to make a character in this. And I said, great, skip the first 3 rules. Don't give a shit about your stats. Don't give a shit about your health or your whatever. We'll get to that. Look at this bonds list. And that's gonna give you so many ideas. Then look at the edges and the stuff and just get excited for the things that you want your character to do well. And then once you know what those bonds and what those edges require of you statistically, then go back and make your stats appropriate, so that way you have that for strength or whatever. Because in its current iteration, it encourages you to do it in a different way, which is why there's that back and forth, which, just could be some reformatting. But because you have such gold with the bonds and experiences and different things, use that first, highlight that first, because that's what will get people excited to play the system, and then they can worry about the math and numbers that make that system a reality.
Yeah, and I think this just speaks to preference, right? Skylar and Holly love crunchy optimizers, synergizers, looking at long lists of abilities and powers and figuring out, how can I manipulate these in the perfect way to get what I want?
I literally fell asleep last night reading the Lancer rulebook, so that should maybe tell you the kind of person that I am.
Perverts.
Bedtime stories for perverts. Lancer rules. But for me, I have a job and hobbies and limited free time.
As opposed to us.
Yeah.
Who have more jobs and more hobbies. But rather to say that I don't take tremendous amounts of joy in that. I'm busy, dog. I don't like reading super long lists of all this complicated stuff that feels to me too similar, redundant, crufty. And that's kind of the problem, is because I was pitched slightly otherwise.
Yeah, I will say Skylar and I really are perverts. Our date nights used to be we would pick a beloved character in media and figure out how to make them into a D&D character and pick out their spells.
Now, that's good, clean fun right there.
Sometimes you will be dear friends and fiance to people whose worlds are so different from your own, and the world opens up to you.
Listen, I love Slay the Spire as much as the next cat, especially the Slay the Spire 2, who's got my brain all lit up. But the difference there being that it's easier to build synergies if I have a truncated list that doesn't overlap so much. And I found more often than not, there were a variety of things there that felt a little to me, right? Maybe I'm missing out on certain synergies. For example, Iron Skin and Signature Defense effectively sort of do the same thing in my mind about, adjusting your defense stat in a positive way. But Iron Skin is a worse signature defense. So, but, then Skylar pointed out to me, there are different ways that can combine signature defense rests on pivoting off of a different skill, where Iron Skin just ups it by 2. It's like a flat number. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't have the optimizer's spirit.
And I think it well identifies like the type of person for whom Clutch is a game that will be quite appealing. I think we've pretty well identified, though, that there is an area of Clutch's advertising that maybe feels a little out of step with its current design. The very first sentence of the game is, Clutch is a light, tactical action role-playing game made for weird, fantastical settings. I don't know in its current version if I would call Clutch light. It feels pretty heavy investment. Like, let's take the maneuvers list, for example. It starts on page 79. It runs all the way through page 81. There are 14 different maneuvers that are always accessible to every character and GM-controlled creature in the game. And these things, if you're playing optimally, will come up every single turn. There's 14 of them. Some of them are defensive, some of them are offensive, some of them are
situational.
Yeah, like giving you an attack with your tactical action. Some of them are using your tactical action to enhance the attack you're making with your basic action. It's a lot, right? And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but definitionally to me, having to memorize 14 maneuvers that could come up at the drop of a hat at any given moment that are just the generic layer 0 that run under every character interaction in the game before you even get into edges, bonds, spells, psionics, that's not light. That's crunchy.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like there is currently a misalignment between the way the game advertises itself and the way the game manifests in play. And I think that what I would encourage Matt to do is introspect a little about which of those is the priority. I would assume that proper tactical crunch is Matt's priority because he's written 145 pages of it, and we'll get more into this in the interview as we ask further. But I think that there just needs to be some alignment between advertising and actual product.
Yeah, because it says, like, in our pitch that we received, centered around crafting interesting builds without having to use a spreadsheet. All options are interesting with little bloat or useless options. Not to be actually, but pitons and carabiners. Carabiner does what pitons don't, so why is there a piton there if it does a worse job of being a carabiner? And like other things like that, right? You know, this game is complicated. This game does have a lot of maneuvers. You do kind of need a spreadsheet to keep track of stuff, and that's fine. There are 2 perverts here on this very podcast who love that. But then advertise to them, right? I felt misled, which is, like, fine. I still had a lot of fun playing Clutch, and I think it was interesting once I got past the frustration of making the character. And, you know, like, I would say some of the combat stuff is easier, and some of it's harder or, you know, complex, right? So, you know, maybe just, I think you're right, an internal speculation on what your game is in its reality, and advertising accordingly is the move.
Yeah, because I got into it and then I was so excited about all of these different systems, but I don't think I would ever pitch the game if I was telling it to a friend as light. I'd be like, oh, hey, if you like, you know, a little bit of crunch, if you want to get into that, like, you know, character creative aspect, if you like going through and like picking out different feats and stuff, and if like that's exciting for you, definitely give this game a shot, because again, all of the choices are very evocative, but there's a lot of choices. It is by nature not particularly light, and so again, totally fine. It doesn't have to be light. I think the reason all of these systems are in there and why all of these systems are exciting for someone like me who likes many systems and many complexities and many things to kind of work my way through, because it makes any given turn to turn or the process of character creation more interesting, because I have to balance and make sacrifices and do all these various stuff. It makes it fulfilling for someone like me. This might be light compared to like Warhammer 40k, but it's still by its own nature not necessarily light, which again isn't a bad thing. It's just a matter of priorities, and if you're going to play this game, which I think you should, I have a lot of love for this game and for the experience that we had, you should know that that tagline at the very beginning might just currently in its alpha iteration, again, very early iteration, be a little misleading.
To speak a little from the game master perspective, we've largely been addressing how it feels to play as a player. A thing I really loved about this game was its dedications to procedure. I felt that the moment-to-moment play of we are exploring a wide and uncaring world felt very immediately accessible for me to run. I liked that there were built-in systems for weather and the navigation of terrain, and I thought they interlocked pretty nicely in ways that could have an immediately felt impact on the player characters that then prompted new decision making, right? The moment when it was getting so swelteringly hot that you had to take off your armor and everyone was kind of dealing with the uncertainty, the bulk problems, we slew an animal and it has all this awesome meat, but if we want to be able to keep this meat for more than a day, we need to like make camp and make jerky out of it, which right now we don't have time for. But maybe if this adventure were to continue, we'd have a moment where the best thing to do for the characters would be to take 2 days, gather a fuck ton of sticks, and very slowly, carefully make a shit ton of jerky. And that's awesome. Like that, I love that shit. I love the survivalism. I love all the procedures for it. I love that they have kind of various degrees of engagement and different modes. They don't feel like they're all being hammered into the exact same shape. You know, fishing gets a whole mini game's worth of tables of crazy fish you can pull out, but the entertain section says you, the player, have to genuinely entertain your friends, and I love that. Like, it felt very ludically harmonious.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time calling me and Skylar perverts, but we got a third pervert here. Julie was rubbing her hands together about the bulk and all the fun survivalist preparation we had to do. I thought it was great.
The travel actions are phenomenal.
I also really liked them. Actually, that was what attracted me to this game the most, was the survival stuff. I really like survival. I've always cared. Naked and Afraid is one of my favorite shows. You know, I love thinking about, I love it. I think it's great.
We found your perversion.
Yeah, bug bites are a huge problem. We should care about them. You know. And that scene where we got to, you know, we got these eggs. It was so awesome. And then they were being stolen by these snake possums, the snossums. And then we killed the snossums, and then we got super awesome meat based off of a roll about how much meat we can harvest from the snossums, and that they do have a cap, which is great because they should, because they're medium-sized or whatever. I loved that. And then worrying about the bulk and what to do with it, and like making decisions about that kind of thing makes it immersive and really highlights that feeling of being outside in the wilderness, which Clutch wants to be about.
If there's one thing that I want it to be more about in its procedures, it like touches on this with the fishing, because it has a lot of unique fish, but the rest of the procedures and systems as they are currently in place don't give me as the GM a lot of ways to make things weird. Like the cobra-headed possums, that's a Julie original. I came up with that and used the predator stat block, but right now there are some nice, really robust stat blocks for human opponents, and those are where you get your psychers and your burners and all your crazy, you know, they have the level of variety that the player characters have.
Where they're also pushers and bleeders and seers.
You are not referencing 2009 push.
Actually, I'm referencing 2009's push La Division. So jot that down.
Oh my god.
But what it didn't have a lot of is it didn't have a lot of Weird West sauce for me to put on things. Basically, all of the random encounter tables, the full list of random encounters are like raiders, critters, a predator, it gets hotter, it gets colder, like things that like I would do if I was making a random encounter table for like a mundane adventure game, right? A mundane survival game. I'd be like, there's a wolf, there's a fox.
Yeah, where's the Sharknado?
Yeah, like I want lists with like weird, crazy bullshit on them of like crazy, bizarro effects. And if you want to keep that weird, like have it be a sub list, right? Have it be that like high and low results direct you to another weirder list for when you hit the crazy stuff. But I felt like I was like playing it and I was like, yeah, I've got critters, predators, prey, and then a bunch of humans, but I don't have like the weird flora and fauna that I see pictured in the book to like throw at the players and organically generate Weird West moments.
Yeah, I feel like while the character creation with shit like amphibious or viscous or all these other little like funky keywords for like the human or human adjacent sort of playable and NPC characters evokes a lot of that. I wish there was like a way within the encounters tables to generate that to speak on like Fallout New Vegas specifically, that wild wasteland kind of quality, because there is like I think a weird result, right? Like in one of them, like a cow can show up, and like that's kooky and funky.
In all of them, someone's cow is the second to last option.
It's so funny.
Wow.
So
which I think is adorable.
Very, very funny.
A lot of cows.
But it's also just like that's just a cow. Like where's the one where like like I think it'd be awesome.
Could it at least have two heads?
Crazy. Yeah, like it could be a mutated cow, but I think it'd be awesome if maybe a bit too zany to be like, oh, you rolled this extreme result. One of your members camping gets abducted by aliens. Solve that now. Like figure that out now. You have to figure out
Yeah.
this
I would love
crazy
that shit.
thing.
That would go crazy.
That'd be fucking awesome, right? And then have like a one-off like weird alien stat block or like a funky mini game for how to track down a UFO or something, Like I think it'd be or like something like totally absurd, like a polar bear that you like a thing that you would never find, like like
Give me my Lost moment.
Yeah, I think because we already kind of touched on with the character creation, it naturally wants you, the player, to lean into the weird. That's why there's so many options to fulfill that from a character building standpoint. The same should be said about the world. The world should really lean into the weird. And I think having more tables that make things funky, there's a lot of, good bits, that angry alligator, the wandering cow, get even zanier. I think that would help bring the fulfillment to a more solid place than it already is.
And I think that's an interesting challenge, because if you want to do a realistic, procedural, survivalist game, you do have to contend with what does that look like when met with the fantastical, right? When you are dealing with fantastical storms or fantastical creatures and you have fantastical powers, what does it mean to then proceduralize that into very gritty, very specific, realistic day-to-day survival know-how? I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm very excited to see what Clutch can do when it really leans into the magic that can happen when you touch those two things together. Like, what if you find an ice crocodile and its hide gives you like +2 cool heat resistant or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want.
That's cool.
I want to be getting weird loot from weird creatures in weird environments.
I want to be
In the West.
In the West specifically, I want to be camping in the middle of a deserted building, and at 2:32 in the morning, the Kool-Aid Man busts down the door and becomes like a fightable encounter. Just make it strange, make it even stranger. I think it's great, and obviously that's like easy to say from just like a fun player perspective. I'm sure it's a challenge from like a writing and a designing and a synthesizing with the actual survival mechanics of the world. But I think doing that will give this game such a unique niche that you can't really find anywhere else. That I think could be a lot of fun if that balance is properly struck.
If I could have like maybe a productive direction to push that in, I think the answer there is not creating a bunch of bespoke table outcomes. I think you have a table outcome which is just called something weird, and then you have another subtable of the weird things, and the something weird subtable should be like a huge table, like one big centralized table, like weird things for creatures, weird things for locations, weird things for objects. And it's like a big, something dumb, like a D100 or a D66 table, and you roll a couple times on it and mash things together. And that's how I think you get like a big repository of strangeness that doesn't just feel like, oh, the cow with 2 heads that has lasers come out of its eyes. That's one of the bespoke list results. We've met that thing already, so it's not weird anymore.
Whereas if you do it with this Julie's suggestion, it's, oh, I rolled a 2-headed animal with laser eyes. Great, right? Like, it's achieving the same thing by like mad-libbing together a creature. Like
a Raccoon Sky Pirates trash list level of options, but but formulated in such a way that you can mix and match things together to create like super unique random results. I think that's very fun.
I think we found our answer. I want blue sky levels of Mad Libs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why are we talking about this RPG? There's a Cheeto in the White House.
Bruh.
It's getting bigger.
Well, that's about as good of an ending as I can.
I was gonna say,
That's happening.
I think we nailed it, gang.
Yep. We gotta go get that Cheeto out of there, I suppose.
And
My fingers are covered in dust right now.
Bruh. All right. And with that was our post-mortem for Clutch. But don't worry, we will be talking more about Clutch because next week we will have part 1 and part 2 of our interview with Matthew, the creator of Clutch. Part 1 will obviously always be for the main feed, and part 2, as always, will be on our Patreon.
And then after that, we're playing more Vampire the Masquerade. So get very excited. Our next game.
And we're so sorry to say that Neo and Julie did say that they're leaving the podcast.
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough. And with that, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Thanks for listening.
All right. Till then.
Hi, and thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then we'd really appreciate if you left us a review. If you really like what we do here and want to support us further, you can join us at patreon.com/tinytablepodcast. Our business email is also open for inquiries at tinytablebusiness@gmail.com, and all of our socials can be found in the episode description for any shenanigans you might want to follow. Till next time, see ya!